So we're sitting now with Anne-Marie Voorhoeve. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Who's the Global Creative Strategy Director for the Club of Budapest, the international division of the Club of Budapest.
Yes,
and then you're
right.
also the president of the Club of Budapest in the Netherlands.
That's right. That's right.
And
yes.
You're here this weekend as well for the Institute of New Paradigm Research.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very interested in what your vision around the work that you're going to be doing for the Club of Budapest is.
I think it's important what I learned again here at this weekend with the Laszlo Institute is the importance to really deeply realize that consciousness is crucial. Consciousness is what is, and that matter is the manifestation of this consciousness. And if we really fully take that in, and I know this, and every time I listen to people, it sinks in more, and I see, okay, so how does that work out in my life? Where do I see me doing that? Where do we see us doing that in relation to each other? And the Club of Budapest is bringing people together who are wanting to bring this new paradigm into form now.
So into form, meaning, how do we take, we've heard some really very highly advanced knowledge around physics and science this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is that part of your role is to figure out how we translate that into something that will be utilizable in our day-to-day life.
That's right. And how to inspire people and bring them together and to strategically connect them and also give them creative input where they need that or want that, to share that together. So I'm very much focused on bringing people together in situations and design processes with them where they can really combine their knowledge, their practice, their heart, their intention, and come up with something that is more than they could be thinking of themselves. So always looking to see how we can bring together the collective consciousness and then see how that works out for me, us, and how we organize ourselves in the world. Is it education? Is it health? Is it business? There are so many ways.
Is it all of the above?
Yes.
I think that's part of what we're understanding is it's not siloed. It's not any one sector that's going to bring this in.
No, it's all interrelated. And then also seeing how the life conditions and the culture and the worldviews that people have, how they bring it into form in a different way. So doing it in the Netherlands is very different than doing it here in Italy, and of course it's all the same. But it's as if lighting up different parts of the consciousness in those situations. And that is what I find so fascinating, working with these many different groups, clubs, that are autonomous in the way they do it. You know, they have their own programs, their own ways that they do it. And there's something that's connecting us all. And if we could align even more. So what I've really learned to give more forms from Professor Ervin Laszlo is that the coherence in ourselves, between each other and in the larger whole, is what it's all about.
Well, I think Nitimo's presentation really data visualized that in a very powerful way this weekend as well.
Yes.
Anne-Marie, could you just share a bit about what the Club of Budapest is? I think many of our viewers are not familiar with the club.
Okay, so about 22 years ago, Ervin Laszlo set it up as a way to see how science and spirituality could be brought more together. So he'd been very active in the Club of Rome, but that part was not as much worked out as it could have been. So it was, that was the time, and that was what was on the table. And he felt with him, others also, the importance of bringing spirituality into the whole way that we were looking into the world. So that's when the Club of Budapest was set up. The first meeting was there. And out of that, it was first kind of a way to bring people together, more of a think tank, and of developing, okay, so if this is what we know that is needed, what does that really mean, and how can we bring that from science and spirituality more together. And in 2014, the club was 21 years, and he made a call to say, now let's move from a think tank to a do tank. And that's very much my passion. I love to think and I love to get input from all kinds of, but my automatic reaction is, okay, what does that mean in practice? So, and I think that's many of the different clubs around the world are trying to do that.
And how many clubs are there in total worldwide?
It's developing very quickly, but at the moment about 23, 22, 23, 24, I don't know with whom he's speaking.
Right.
So, and it's very much starts with a soul connection, I think. So a sense of recognizing each other, that we're conscious of the role of, that we are consciousness as a world.
Do you have a sense, when you speak of these soul connections, do you have a sense that this is a collective of people who have almost, I would say, a mission in this very important time of the shift?
Yes. I think many of them, I haven't met everybody, so that's what I'm working on now, to meet them all. But I think, you know, Professor Ervin Laszlo has written, well, 90 books or nearly 90 books, I don't know. And then all the other things he has written and brought out, and others of course as well. And I think so everybody's been inspired and is inspired by that. That is written, is made available, is brought together in well, like these weekends and conferences. So everybody who is responding to that does feel that we can change the way of history, and that there are ways that are being offered to us, insights, and that we can bring that forward out into our own countries, in our own groups, and in different sectors of society.
Anne-Marie, the first evening we were together, you spoke about your children and having grown up really in this atmosphere of a more conscious home, and now facing their transition into the world. Can you just give us a snapshot of what you think young people are facing right now as they navigate an old paradigm that's in transition, and the choices that they have to make in which of these paradigms to participate?
Well, I think you've already said it very nicely. What is the challenge that they're looking at? That there is the new paradigm, but they're also being taught the old paradigm, and that how to discern whether you need to really follow that old paradigm in your education, in the work that you'll be going to doing or that you're imagining to do. My children are 20 and just 18, so they're in that phase. So they are studying, and a lot of the literature and the work that they're being taught has to do with the old paradigm. And they are also hearing the new paradigm. But they sometimes say to me, yeah, Mom, get real. The outside world is not there yet. So I need to make sure that I can work in the old paradigm. And yes, that's true. We all have to cope in some ways. And at the same time, I think the young generation has the potential, if we can support them in a way, to put the new paradigm immediately into practice.
So this
but they have to find their own way. So
this is a question of choice then. So we have a new paradigm upon us, and I think it's individual or what was Stefan's quintillion choice?
Yes.
The choices we make in our everyday.
Yes.
That this is not a shift that's going to happen and then you would catch up to it. It's a shift that every one of us is participating in.
Yes.
Or choosing to participate in.
Yes.
I'm interested in, from the time you were a young person, did you have a sense of something calling you forward that relates to where you find yourself now?
Yes.
And what was the seed of that?
I think my parents really seeded that, and the way the life conditions we were in. So my parents both separately left the Netherlands to find out what for them was the real world and their truths. So they left the Netherlands in 55, 56, and they both separately went to Baghdad in a totally different world, where they met each other and got married, and where my older sister and I were born. And in that situation, they tried to find a way to participate in society and to be true to their own self. But what was that? So I think that was what they were looking for.
So that was modeled for you from an early age.
And then after 5-6 years, we moved to Singapore. My father was working for a trading company, and my mother in Baghdad was working for the embassy, but she's, when they got married in that time, you stopped working as a woman. So then we went to Singapore, which of course is a totally different environment with predominantly Chinese. And then after that we moved to Malaya, which again is a very different environment. And in that there was always this, my parents very much had a choice that they always wanted to integrate as quickly as possible in this place where they were. Now that was very much an expat world, because that's how it was in those days.
So they wanted to integrate locally or into the expat community?
Both. They tried to do both. But there was much more distance, I think, than nowadays to integrate. But they always tried to do both. And there was this looking with them, then they were looking also to see what was their new Dutch identity, because we were living not in a Dutch expat world, but in a British expat world. So that I learnt a lot about how to go back to ourselves to see, okay, what are we and how do we relate to the outside world? And I think what I picked up was that there were many different forms of society, but in general they were all the same. Because I didn't know otherwise how to navigate if I didn't see that we were all connected. And what then happened in 67, 68, there was a lot of tension in Malaya, and there was a civil war. So that made had a large influence for me as well. That we could do that, and I didn't really understand why, and I didn't feel it was necessary that we did that.
You mean in terms of creating a war, a civil war?
Yes.
Why we as humans
would
do
that? Yeah, and that had to do also with feeling connected or disconnected.
So was that a moment of awakening for you on some level, or were you viewing that from a place of being more awake?
I think it's my life purpose to see how we connect. I don't know if that's more awake or not. I mean, it was just that that was the way I was trying to make sense of the world.
When did you realize that there was a shift happening?
I went in 2004, I went to Bhutan. I was invited to join a delegation to Bhutan. And I thought because of my background, I was quite good in relating to different cultures. Well, I am at a certain level, but in creating new forms of society that were relating to the Bhutanese way of working, of living and working, and the Dutch way, I made a lot of mistakes in those processes. Thank goodness they were open, and they said that we would look for problems, and we would go into certain solutions, and we would work it all out, and then they would say, great idea, takes another 10 years before we can start working on this, because we first need to be able to see how we can get into that mountain. So I realized that there was something I was really missing, and that's when I started looking for new ways to understand the life and surroundings around me, and I got in touch with the Center for Human Emergence and Spiral Dynamics Integral, the work of Claire Graves and Don Beck, and that really opened my eyes, my heart, my mind, and we started to put that daily into practice, how we could serve the transition and societal changes through consciousness development.
So this was 2004.
2004, 2005, and in 2006 I met Ervin, who was also, giving word to the need for coherence and the need for experiments. So what I really picked up then, every time you listen you hear something else, was the need to experiment. That in order to get to that tipping point, we don't exactly know what creates that tipping point. We know some things, but not everything. So experiment, try things out, and that's what I've been doing since then.
Well, I very much appreciate you taking the time to sit down and speak with us, and wish you much success in your new role in the Club of Budapest International, and look forward to what creative things you bring into that environment.
Well, thank you very much for asking the questions and reflecting back a lot of my own things. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.